Welcome to the Excel Purpose Show with Karms Fung.
Today we have Phi Dang, human design life coach, host of Grow Through It podcast, and the author of The Great Unlearning. Welcome.
Hi, Karms. Thank you so much for having me. And I absolutely love your energy and your enthusiasm. So thank you for that. I feel like you're like my hype woman. I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So we got connected through Mark. He's really awesome. So shout out Sway. And he told me that you were someone that I probably would love to meet. And this is our first meeting. And everyone gets to be part of it.
How special and wonderful. And yeah, thanks. Shout out to Mark.
Awesome. So are you cool if we dive straight in?
Let's just go for it. I feel like let's go for it.
Yeah. We're just going to cut the chit chat. I want to know all about human design. So talk to me like I know nothing about human design. Is there some kind of birth chart reading? What is it connected to? Is it like astrology? Is it I Ching? Is it connected to the Asian Bazi? Did you develop your own thing, adopted something, applying an existing philosophy? What is it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the best way to kind of say that human design, it does involve a body graph, which is essentially you can think of it as an energetic blueprint, manual, or roadmap to your soul. And so from there, it's believed it's imprinted at your birth. And so what happens is we can see your like conscious self and what you know of yourself, which very much lines up with astrology. And then we've got this thing which is called by design, which in human design, they believe this was created 3 months before you entered your body. And so a lot of people can kind of see human design, as a way to see your soul contract in this lifetime with the universe. It answers a lot of questions about who you are, why you are the way you are, what is like your purpose in life. And essentially it's distilled a blend of like, I guess, modern ancient sciences, and it does involve like the I Ching, the Kabbalah, energetic centers, and it kind of all synthesizes that. And so my job as a reader is to see this like blueprint in front of me, and I essentially can see the story of your life and what's happening to you and why you are the way that you are. And I guess when I first saw human design, it actually made no sense to me like a couple of years ago. And it wasn't until I guess I was starting to open up more spiritually that when I found it again 2 or 3 years later, it suddenly made so much sense to me. And I never actually went to school for human design. It sounds quite strange, but I guess like once I came back to it in that way, it kind of just downloaded through me and it just kind of all made sense intuitively. And so that's kind of what I've done to infuse into like my coaching sessions, human design, intuition, and like that is human design in a nutshell.
My mind is like stuck on 2 things that you said. So let's rewind a little bit and go deeper. So the first thing you said is that there is a soul contract 3 months before I'm born. So we're saying that our life is like if we believe in this philosophy, are we saying that prior to me being born, the universe already knows that I'm about to be born and that what my life will entail, as in there's some sort of fate or predetermined destiny?
Yeah, to a degree, but it's actually not the universe. It's you. It's you that has decided and made an agreement essentially with the universe that you've chosen to come into this lifetime to learn certain things and have certain lessons and be a certain way for you to evolve and grow for your soul.
You being like, assuming I have multiple life and I'm a conscious being and that I chose to come down into Earth? Is that what you mean?
Yes, based on that presumption. Yeah, because the way that I kind of like to explain human design personally is the way that I see is like you're like the main character of a movie, a TV show, or a book. And so before you came here, you've decided, hey, I want to learn about these things. So in order to set up my life. So for example, when I looked at your human design based on what you told me, your soul essentially said, hey, like I'm here for an adventure. I'm somebody that's probably impatient with my timelines. So something that I deeply want to learn is to surrender to the timings, to understand that actually that like as much as I want consistency and structure and stability, my life isn't built for that. I'm probably somebody that's going to pivot a lot. I'm going to want to be challenged and find different adventures. So that's very much something I see on a conscious level. And on a soul level, underneath that is this desire to navigate emotional waters, to kind of like open up and learn to like feel your feelings and very much gain these insights from pain and turn it into like purpose and power. So I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's like a very top line look
Yeah,
at your
that's
human design.
yeah, that's
I mean, I
pretty
don't know
much
you, right?
that's
So
pretty
I'm
much
just
yeah,
looking
you
at
don't
your
know
human
me.
design. Yeah.
Yeah, so what you said there does resonate. Um, maybe we'll dive a little bit more into that in a moment. Let me ask you the second thing that was on my mind. So you were saying that it somehow got downloaded into you. Now, I hear this a lot from people that are like getting their spiritual awakening, that
Mm.
certain things get kind of like downloaded or they just sort of received it. What was that moment like for you? Like, and what were you doing before that? Like, what were you doing before? Were you on a spiritual journey, seeking for this? And then what happened in the moment that you felt this download? Like, how did you react? What did you get? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it does sound wild. And I think it's like I definitely didn't seek it. And I think my path, my spiritual journey really began when I just turned 20 and my dad had passed away. And I think when you have somebody so close to you pass away, like your
Sorry to hear that.
perspective of life completely changes. And I think at that time I thought it was pretty rise. You know, I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I was like, okay, this big life thing has happened. So yeah, like I'm awake, like I'm conscious. But very quickly it slipped back into old habits, kind of just like living your life, going into the corporate world and doing this kind of grind. And I think it was kind of like in the background, and I was very focused on success and what that meant for me and happiness. And so it wasn't until actually the pandemic, because I think the pandemic gave me the first time in my life where I was able to have a pause and spaciousness and time. And then from there, I guess based on my experiences in life, having lost my dad at an early age, my experiences with people in my life, as well as being in the corporate world, I suffered, burnout, and, my mental health really came to the forefront. And that was really hard growing up in an Asian background as well. We're kind of taught not to feel things,
Yeah.
saving face and all of those. And so my journey really began, I think, during the pandemic when I had that, I started this passion project on Instagram, and I started to be like, well, now I'm like bored, like we were stuck inside. So I actually went
What was your
and
passion project?
it was like on Instagram. I was like an anonymous account and just kind of talking about mental health. I didn't really have a name or anything attached to it. It's just something I was passionate about. And it's now turned into like my personal brand and my business. And in the pandemic, I wanted to be challenged again. And something that I always kind of avoided was the cold. So I decided to go on a Wim Hof retreat. And that really
I
opened me
love
up
that guy.
because, yeah, like I was doing breath work and I was putting myself in all these situations. And during this process, like I was starting to have a lot of like visions and things. Like I saw a past life and I was like, this is weird. Like, I don't know what is happening. But essentially after that retreat, something obviously had unlocked, and I was having very vivid dreams about people I'd met on the retreat once. And I would have very personal information. Like I just met them once and I'd be like, hey, I had a dream about this. And this person would be like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Like, how did you know? And I was like, I really don't know. And I feel like that's how intuition and spirituality comes into your life. It has to prove to you like, this is completely illogical. It sounds crazy, but there must be something more to it because of that crazy nature. And I guess when human design kind of came back into my life, in the sense that it just resonated more, maybe because I was ready, to be honest with you. Maybe it was a timing of my life that I was ready to receive the insights and the things just made sense to me. From a human design level, there's different personality lines, and I have a 2 profile line, which is what they call like a natural genius. So it's kind of like certain things just really make sense to you, and it can be really hard to explain to people. So I guess that in a way is to ascribe to how this like system downloaded into me. But I think it's like the openness and the willingness to be like, okay, like this is something different. Am I willing to explore it instead of maybe like shutting it down and kind of being scared of what it entails?
Wow. Okay.
Bet you weren't expecting that for this podcast.
That's yeah, no, like when you said like about the Wim Hof thing, I used to be really scared of the cold too. So I'm not sure if that's an Asian thing or it's just like a everybody thing, or I don't know. For me to conquer that coldness, I actually took up like snowboarding,
I love that.
to make winter enjoyable. And I was looking up Wim Hof work as well. So I tried the cold shower and stuff. I don't have I have jumped into a frozen lake naked before because of him too. So
People are
yeah,
going to be like, what's the story behind that now? You've opened up a can of worms.
well, I was like, I went to Finland to like try to chase Santa Claus, not like he exists, but like, you know, at Rovaniemi, like the home of
Yeah.
Santa. So I was like at Finland, and then someone told me, or maybe part of like the travel Googling was like, you got to go to this place and it's like this frozen lake. And there's a, I don't know if it's a trend or what, but you're like meant to go naked in it. I think it's like in their culture to do that. Like it's pretty normal actually. So I went there, and then I kind of tiptoe out. You get warmed up a bit first, right? Like in the sauna. And then you tiptoe out, and it's this lake. And I thought it was an enclosed area, like male, female, like enclosed area. But then I realized it was a national park, and it was just like, so when I tiptoe out, I was like, holy shit. And then like on the sides, it's like a bunch of guys just like having a barbecue. You know? I was like, I don't know about this. So I went back inside, and then I was like, I'm not doing this. One, it's too cold. Two, walking in the cold, it's painful. Three, it's like you have to walk through the wooden plank to get to the area. I'm not doing this. This is fucking crazy. And then I went in, and one of the Finnish ladies, she was like, you got to go. And I'm like, what do you mean how? Like which part of my brain like logically go, yes, I'm going to go jump into this thing. And she's like, you just got to do it. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, I did it after she said it, and she reminded me of the whole Wim Hof thing, and you know, their culture, and just to embrace the cold. And I did it, and it was fine. Like I stayed there for a while too. So yeah, and like now I used to be a very logical person. Like I did the whole corporate thing too, but yeah, like Eckhart Tolle, I'm like, I feel kind of really dumb when you said you read Eckhart Tolle's book at 20 and you felt like you were living in the present, because I think I bought that book around that time, but I didn't understand it at all. I like left it on my bookshelf probably for, I don't know, maybe like 8-10 years before I really picked it up and understood it. I was like, hey, this book is really awesome. Like I understand it. Before, it just felt like a foreign language.
Yeah, but I think that's what happens when you need to embody things and live your life a little bit. And that's why I say a lot of life is sometimes we come back to something and it makes a lot more sense, because I think my ego thought I really understood Eckhart Tolle's work. Looking back, did I actually? No, I think I was one of those people like, yeah, like I'm present. Like I know that life is more than this, but I don't think I actually embodied that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like a different level of understanding. It's like the first time you read it, you're like, yeah, I'm living in the present. Yeah, I'm enjoying my popcorn or whatever, right? Then it's like when you reread it, it's like, no, it's like way deeper than that. And like a lot of the words really come to life in a different way because our consciousness is expanded, right?
Yeah, I'm very much a proponent.
Oh.
Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I was very much a proponent of kind of like this concept of the upward spiral. Like often we'll revisit things in life, but from a different vantage point, as a different person, because we're ever evolving. And so things come back, but we're a bit different. And then each time it's kind of like momentum. It's going up and up, like different depths and layers to what we really know.
I learned this thing where when you're doing the spiral, like when we're going through our, let's just say, life evolution, that at each level, we kind of have to be like a 180 version of ourselves to go to spiral up. And that's why we will feel like we're completely not ourselves when we have to try and be this other person. And it's only when we can embrace that flip, then we get to that next level. And then once we thought we got it, it's like, shit, it doesn't work, because to spiral to the other, to up again, you have to flip again to the other end. So we continuously like redefining ourselves to go up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of tying into my book, like The Great Unlearning, and kind of like where I got this concept, because a lot of human design is also about deconditioning. Because when we come into life, it's kind of like we're very fertile. We're like sponges as children, and we take up all these beliefs and we think, oh, like happiness looks like this, success looks like this, I should be living my life like this. And then it's as you get older, you realize like I've got so much stuff that doesn't actually serve me. And I have to really like peel back all the layers and really get to like my core authentic self, like what do I actually want, despite like my culture, my background, or what my friends or my family think. And I think that's a really like scary concept when you get stripped, because you're thinking, oh, I know so much. And as life goes on and you start to realize maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did, which is okay.
Tell me more about this book. I've been trying to write a book for a long time, and I always find it quite hard. I only very recently have come to like a structure I'm happy with, and it's like now is like in flow. When you were writing this, The Great Unlearning, this is all of your whole journey of awakening, right? And
Yeah.
how long did it take you?
It took me over a year, but like I think the actual process when I got to the nitty gritty, like a lot of it I wrote within 3 months, and I had the deadline pushed because I realized as I was writing the book that I had to live life a little bit more for the experiences to integrate. And part of those experiences aren't necessarily in the book. For example, the first thing that came to mind is probably fresh because I have a Vietnamese background, and I just came back from Vietnam for only the second time in my life. I actually only just went to Vietnam for the first time after I wrote that book. And I even talk about in the book being like, I've never been to Vietnam, but maybe I will one day. So I think that's really interesting about how you kind of have to live your life. And for me, again, this kind of idea was because I wanted to flip what was going on in the personal development world. I think, you know, also working with clients, there's this narrative of like, I always have to be working on myself. I always have to be optimizing. Like I always have to be like healing, which to a degree is true, but I think it can get quite heavy. And then when we're always thinking, oh, I have to learn from an expert, I have to learn from a teacher, that we forget our own intuition and this inbuilt compass that exists within us. And so that's why I kind of talk about this concept of like unlearning and unbecoming who we think we're meant to be and what people tell us to be, and really being like our true, aligned and authentic self.
Yeah, I like the way you write. I think for a lot of people that are at the beginning of their unlearning journey, basically, like, which is what I had to do too. It's like questioning everything that we believe, like on what basis do we have those beliefs? And that unlearning is a difficult journey. It's like peeling all these layers of ourselves. And what I love is that you've written it in a way that's like, when I previously said it was really hard to read Eckhart Tolle's book, that's kind of what I mean. It's like someone reading this will actually be able to follow and understand that if they're at the beginning of the journey. First, if they read Eckhart Tolle's book, even though it's got God knows how many thousands of reviews, and it's an amazing book, if that was the first book, like they would grasp the concept. So yeah, I think that's where personal development, that whole process is essential, when it's like when you're starting at something that's easy to read from someone that's like perhaps like more their age and where they at in life when they were writing this, is when that's the thing that's going to resonate. Because I'm sure as you get older and you're like, you know, going through your evolution, it's like you may release multiple books, and that would be like representation of like those growth moments and what you've learned, like maybe in each decade or each few years, right? So I love that you wrote it so early. Like you're such an inspiration. Like you look really young. I'm assuming you're actually young. You look really young. And I find young people that do these steps, it's so crazy, because it's like when you were saying about the Asian culture, it's like it is hard. Like that whole parents expect you, they have a certain expectation in the Asian culture, let's put it that way. The success, money, status have a particular thing that we have to, they expect us to be a certain level. And to do something outside of traditional, that isn't like the whole doctor, lawyer, scientist, accountant, that kind of logical stuff, it's weird to them. It's like totally new, and they think we're like gone crazy, even if they believe in some sort of religion, or some sort of spiritual thing. It's like it's still very woo-woo for them as a job, right? How did you navigate that with your family? I know you mentioned your dad's not here. Was your mom supportive of this process, or did you hide it from her, or what happened there?
I kind of think I hid it a little bit, and I was like, oh, by the way, I quit my job. Oh, did you know I'm a coach? Oh, did you know I was building this on the side? And I guess it's interesting because I think that, you know, when you said like my book probably resonates with more people, I think the thing that was really important for me was to make it practical, but to also make it really real. So as beautiful as the book is, it's also like I guess a fragment of like my traumas and some things that in my shadows and the things that I've had to really work to and really like bearing and being vulnerable with my soul, which is something crazy I never thought I would do, you know, having grown up Asian and being told like, don't talk about your problems and don't talk about that. And I think something that surprises people, like when you can see their parents, is like, when I reflect on my life, a lot of the best things have come from the worst of times. Like my parents actually met fleeing the war in Vietnam. So I wouldn't be here if the war didn't exist, because then my parents wouldn't have met on that boat. And in the same way, I would say to you, like, if my dad didn't die when I just turned 20, I really don't know if I would be here speaking to you now. I think I might be still in this illusion of like, hey, I thought I was going to be like either a lawyer or like a chief marketing officer. I'm going to have lots of money. I'm going to live in like a mansion. And so it's kind of funny how work kind of ends up like that. And I think my mom, having seen me, like when my dad did die, like I went through probably a year or two of like delayed onset of grief. Like I really numbed myself out. And it wasn't because I didn't feel anything. At the time I thought that, but I think I was overwhelmed by having all these feelings and not knowing what to do. Like, what does grief mean? And like, what does death mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, my way of the world is like, your parents are immortal. Like, you know, like they shouldn't be dying so young. So it's kind of like this big wake up call. And so then seeing me in this corporate, but I think she had some idea that I wasn't happy. And then I think ultimately seeing me go through that, when it's like, you don't even, you know, at one point I didn't have the will to live. It was kind of like, oh, if this is something that lights her up and sparks it, like, let's go for it. And I think that there's been that support there. And I think, you know, I'm so lucky that I have that. And I know not everybody does, but again, I think that's like your intuition. Like everything in my head said, this is illogical. Like, you know, we'd been through the pandemic, like my company actually kept me on board more, like with more hours than most people. So I had somewhat of a security, but I couldn't ignore this, like my heart and my soul telling me like, this is the way to go. And to be honest with you, it's led to a life beyond what I even thought was possible for myself. But I had to really trust that instinct, which is something that we don't understand. But I really do think the Asian heritage and roots come from this esoteric philosophy, but something's changed when we kind of like immigration and migrated and adopted a different way of life.
Try to process all of that. I know that a lot of people go through this in their head. How would they know when to trust that intuition to take that leap? Because people ask me that a lot, and I have my version of it, but I always like, you know, my listener or people in my community to hear it from someone else. So when you hear the thoughts of, I really want to do something different, I want to let this like life that I have go. And this is the thing that we held on to for a long time, right? Like built our identity, whether that's corporate or some other job. We've invested a vast amount of time on this thing. And when we want to take this leap, whether it's as a coach or whether it's help someone else or to, and you did it in a way that's, I think you played it kind of safe in a way that you started off with anonymous. You said like, it was like, you just started helping people. So that already is a great tip for people. It's like, if they don't want to put their name out there yet, it's like, you can start it anonymously. However, for them to want to take that leap and just to put themselves out there, how do they know which voice to really listen to? Because there's going to be a whole bunch of them, right?
I think in the first place, if that voice is coming up, it's there for a reason. Like, why would suddenly in your life this voice come to play? So I think that's like when you start to delineate, like, I think this other self, this ego self, is like, oh, I should, I must, and I do. There's like all these conditions. Whereas when you strip it and you unlearn everything, it's like, okay, like, where did this come from? And I think there's so many different ways to do it. And you have to like honor your path, because I think you can't necessarily follow in the steps of somebody else. And I'm a big believer that, you know, when we come to this lifetime, especially with a lot of like generational or ancestral stuff, like probably it's because we're here to break it. We're not here to necessarily continue that. Like, I know, you know, they kind of say in your DNA, you're carrying stuff from like your grandparents and like your grandparents' grandparents. So I think when you kind of take this empowering stance that maybe you feel differently because you're meant to, and you're meant to kind of break that. And I think that one of the biggest things, and I think it has been influenced by the fact that when my dad died, he had like, you know, there's all these things he wanted to do, but he hadn't done it. And so for me, I think about like when I'm on my deathbed, what would I regret more? Like trying to make a business work and it didn't work out, or not trying at all. And I think I had to really understand that the worst possible outcome it might feel like death, but it wasn't actually death. The worst possible outcome is, yeah, maybe you're a bit embarrassed or it didn't work out. But most businesses don't, right? Isn't there like some statistic like in the first year, like 90% fail? But it's like maybe a failure needed to happen to set you onto something else. Like I saw somebody that they said they tried to start a business, it didn't work out. So they started a podcast about that. And now they made a business off the back of that. So I think you don't necessarily know, but what really compelled me was like that whole, like, yeah, on my deathbed, what will I kind of regret more, now or never? So I think that's what really like meant for me. Like, I was like, oh, like the pain of not knowing. Like if I tried and I knew and it didn't work out, like that's okay. Like I won't think about it for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah, just don't leave any what if. Don't leave those question marks. Yeah, that's great. When you were talking about the putting that grief, like just holding it on and like, you know, kind of didn't really process that for a couple of years. How did you kind of come to terms with that on like, now this is the time to allow myself to grieve? Like, I know whether people is having grief or some people hold on to different kinds of pain. They like, I know a lot of people, for example, they've been in different abusive relationship and they hold on to all sorts of pain or shame or, you know, things they wish they could have done different, and they just numbing those emotions. When is it okay to feel them and to know it is all right that they're there?
I think with the wisdom that I have now, I wish I felt it at the time, but I have so much self-compassion and empathy and love for myself because I realized I wasn't equipped at the time to fully feel everything. And I think that's something that's been a game changer. And, you know, in terms of human design, and you might resonate because from what I see, you're an emotional authority like myself. So like learning like, hey, this whole time I was actually built and meant to be emotional. So all these times I thought I was really sensitive and crazy. It was because I saw my emotions as a weakness, but now I see that as a strength.
I saw it as a weakness too for a long time.
Yeah, but it's like now I'm like strong enough, like to be able, like the intuition and feeling everything. I'm like, that's because I've allowed myself to like lean into that. And I think that something that I've been so understanding of is like, like if I can create meaning and purpose, I think inherently there may not be meaning and purpose, whatever, like anyone can create that. But if that's the case, like what am I going to carve out for myself so that I have that power? And I think it's hard when you're going through, but it often is one of those cases, like when you allow yourself to feel it, that's when it dissipates, because I think the emotion's there because it's demanding something of you. Like, you know, that's why they kind of say like emotions are like energies in motions, like there's an emotional charge. And so if we're not moving it and feeling it, that's when there kind of is that book, you know, the body keeps score, like everything's being stored within me. And I think that if I was to apply a logical lens, it's like, am I brave and strong enough to experience discomfort? Am I brave and strong enough to experience something that's unpleasant? It won't kill me. It'll feel like it will, but it won't actually. And I think when I kind of reduced it down to, I'm like, I am capable and strong enough to experience that.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's very inspiring. Yeah, you were talking about my chart. Let's go there. So prior to this podcast, she asked me to if I wanted to send her my birthday and where I was born, and that you'll have a quick read, which you did. So how much of that have you read? Do you have more details to share with me? Because I know you dropped some of that already earlier in the podcast, of the kind of like overview outlook. How deep does it go, and how much of me can you read before you tell me? I just want to know.
I can pretty much read everything. Like I can see like what's going to happen in like 10, 20 years. It's a very personal chart, and there's so many different layers because with human design, there's over 2 billion different combinations. So for example, energetically, you and I are manifesting generators, but that doesn't mean we're the same. There's like all these different layers of what makes you who you are. And in saying that, like, yeah, like, for example, I can see like that your destiny in this lifetime is you have this energy of like the master prophet, the ultimate communicator. Like that just gave me tingles. Like you're someone that wants to express themselves and to share themselves with the world. And that comes from, you're somebody that is an idealist. You have a lot of ideas. You have a very powerful imagination that works for you. And I guess in your journey, I can see it also works against you. what I can really see in this lifetime, there is a self-worth journey, like the things I touched upon, like having compassion and having self-love. I bet that you had to learn that for yourself before you could help your clients and the people in your world. Particularly like the flavors and values of what I kind of see for you is like, you are someone that needs to be very stimulated, like traveling, stories. Like that's when I was smiling when you're telling the story about you jumping to like, because that's so true to your human design. And I think
I've traveled to a lot of places, and I guess you wouldn't have known that. But yeah,
no,
over 30 places. Yeah.
because you're really here, like what I see and distill, like again, why I'm not surprised you have a podcast and a book is you're here to tell stories. I see that as something that deeply weaves within you, you know, and you're someone like I can see like, you know, have a lot of details, but this whole, what does like power mean? Because I also see struggle in your chart, that thing of having, you know, obstacles and challenges and kind of working and finding purpose to your pain, you know, turning, you know, grief into gold, and very much this element of shock factor. I think this year in particular, I see for you as a year that you are starting to tune in more to like shocking people. And that doesn't necessarily mean doing bold things, but just maybe in the little decisions or the people that you know you, or I guess also like waking up to like your intuition. So I wonder if that's like kind of what you foresee in your journey. I wonder if you feel like this year is a big year.
I do feel like this year is the
is.
year. I'm actually changing, coming out more of myself. So I think earlier in my journey, so even though I started this coaching thing for a few years, I played it relatively safe.
Yeah.
Initially, but yeah, this year is the year that I'm playing it a lot more, I don't know, unsafe, which is like all the other elements of me that I normally just like kind of hide, like because it's just like I want to be the professional person that shows up and do that, you know, because I've done corporate work for so long. But yeah, now I'm just kind of do like more of a crazy self. Yeah, so people get to see more of me, and I guess that might be that shock factor that you're talking about, because there's just other parts of me they haven't seen.
Yeah, and I think it's what I can see in your journey is like this sense of letting go of control, and like how does your ego come into that, and how do you go deeper into what you want. And it's funny you brought up presence, because I see presence as something that's going to really like ground you this year, and really like this also like a lot of more feelings are going to come to the surface for you. I think you're going to feel more than ever you have before this year. And I really see like your throat center is like very activated. So that to me that communication, I think that you're ready to share more, because you have a lot of, the way you conceptualize is very different. I think you're very strong in the way that you have these ideas and how you see the world. And I think you're ready and brave enough to kind of like be like, you know what, this is how I see it. And I'm like ready to share that and unapologetically like back myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think for the longest time, it was like, why do I want to share this if there's so much information out there? And then it probably isn't until very recently that, you're right. It's like, I just see the world differently, and different is just different. It's not right or wrong. It's like, this is just how I see it. So why can't we all just share the way we view it? And we know that someone's going to resonate to that. It's not an agreement of you have to see the world the same way, but it's like, hey, that could help you on your own journey.
Yeah. And I think when you do that, you give other people power to do so. Like I think about the most controversial people, like podcasters like Joe Rogan. Whether you agree with him or not, you can say that he certainly backs himself, and there's a respect for that. Whether I agree with what he says, like not really, maybe not. But again, it's like if someone, like everybody has their audience and these people that they're kind of like meant to help. And what I really see for you, like based on your soul purpose, is this idea of like separation, like standing out from the crowd. So that's why I've been kind of saying to you, like the undercurrent of your movie or storyline is this self-worth. Like, who am I to be able to do this? Like, who am I to have the confidence to be this outrageous and bold, to be this person? And like, again, what makes me different when everybody else is doing the same? Like, these are all journeys within like our self-esteem and our confidence.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's like all those different parts in your book. So if we kind of like, which bit have we not touched on? Tell me about, you told me about my inner being, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about my relationship.
Tell you about your relationships.
Yeah. Okay, what can you see there?
I think that you are somebody that, again, would probably attract someone that needs like life experiences and is a bit shocking. Like, I don't think you're someone that goes for the kind of like average, ordinary. That's at least what I see in terms of what you value. Why are you giggling and smiling? Does that resonate?
Yeah, it's because it's so hard. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what I
because like
mean.
someone that's ordinary, you're right, I would just get really bored.
That's what I mean. And you're like adventure. So it's kind of like you're somebody that wants to be with somebody, but they're continually evolving and keeping you on their edge. It's like 1 minute you're like this, and then another. Like that really, to me, what I see excites you because they're evolving and changing. That gives you permission. Like you're not,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to keep having new partners, but it's almost like with this partner, there's so many different adventures that you can go on. And I think that you're, based on what I see of your human design, your ideal partner brings out that confidence within you and they validate like your thoughts. You know, I think you're someone that can be, based on your human design, prone to like, oh, like where does this thought come from? Like, what if this person thinks something about this? So somebody who's just like an avid supporter of what you do. And I think based on your chart, you are quite strong. So I think that can be intimidating for people as well. So that's why I say you need
I
someone
get that
that's
a
like,
lot, actually. The intimidating
that's
thing.
kind of like your balance. And,
Yeah.
you know, based on what I also see is you're someone that can have a lot of projections and ideals. Like people want you to be a certain way and they expect you. And in the minute, like you don't live up to that. I think I see you as somebody that people go to you to fix problems and when there's crisis mode. So you need someone that's going to support you and not going to put their shit on you so that you can focus on yourself and you're kind of like growing together.
Yeah. So when's this person coming, Phi?
Well, they always say in the universe, there's all these different timelines. And I guess it's one of those elusive things. Like if you're chasing sleep or an orgasm, it never seems to happen. The minute you like detach and you let go, that's when it all kind of seems to happen, right?
Oh, the funny thing is, no, I don't chase for it. But that's the thing. It's like, am I supposed to?
Well, I would say based on your human design, like you're here to like respond to things. So I guess it's like partly putting yourself out there, but partly trusting that there's this other force that will kind of take things and help you. And, you know, your energetic type is you're like myself, an emotional manifesting generator. So we're someone that can be really zany. Like we always want to be busy, like we're powerful, we're like moving. And I think sometimes we intimidate people because they don't know what we're up to. What are we thinking? So part of our strategy is kind of like not to tell everything, but kind of give people breadcrumbs like, oh, I'm working on this, or yeah, I'm changing my business. And so people feel less on edge because we're pivoters. Like, you know, when you're a manifesting generator, the most empowering thing that I learned is I'm meant to be a multitasker. I'm not meant to just have one passion in life. I have multiple. I'll have many ideas and I'll start them and then I'll abandon them. And then when I add this emotional layer, it's like I have this gut instinct, but the best decisions in my life, I have to sleep on it. I have to write it out. You know, for big decisions, sometimes I'll take a day or two. For decisions like leaving my job, my corporate job, that took me like 6 months or a year before I was finally like, okay, like I'm in this neutral position. I keep thinking about it. Being an emotional person, will it always ever be 110%? Maybe not. But if I keep thinking about something and going for it, this is my gut saying there's a reason why this is important to me.
Yeah. Did you say it only took you 6 months? It took me like 15 years.
Well, that was I guess, my journey in processing. And I think life orchestrates things. Like, for example, I was really wanting to get promoted. I had made like millions of dollars for my company, and I wasn't getting my way. And I kept being like, why is this happening? But then now I realize like that was the universe trying to force my hand, or this other being, because if I got the promotion, I probably would have stayed. So I really needed things like, if I was in my own prerogative and I did it more proactively, maybe I didn't have to go through that pain or purpose. But ultimately, I needed a bit of a push and like really extenuating circumstances, like poor health, like mental, physical, to be like, okay, something's got to change. Because I always kind of believe, and what I talk to clients about is like, nothing changes if nothing changes. Like if you keep thinking the same, acting the same, feeling the same, nothing's going to change. So you've got to do something. Just try something else. Changing a variable will lead to a different outcome.
I really like your energy. It's like, guys, come on, just go, follow the thing, go do it. Okay, so if people want to work with you on human design, what does that look like for them? So let's say they reach out to you, you know, whether through your Insta or your webpage, and they're like, Fia, okay, this sounds kind of cool. I want to give it a go. What can they expect? What happens? So they will send you like, you know, what I did was like, I sent you my birthday and where I was born. And then do they have like a session with you? Is it like a via
Mhm.
Zoom? Is it like an hour? Does it go for longer? Because obviously this is a bit different when like in a podcast. So
Yes.
just so people know what to expect, what would that look like? Can you just let me know?
Yeah. So exactly, you send your birth details, like when you were born, what time, in the location. From there, after you book in, I will essentially create like a blueprint for you. So it's like 90 pages and it goes through like every
Holy
single,
shit.
yeah, it goes through all the layers. So it talks about like your energy type, how your best energy flows, how you make the best decisions. It talks about your personality,
So
like
do they
why you
get
approach
this
life
after the session with you, or that's like
during the
something that you...
session.
Oh, so you guys
Yeah.
are like kind of writing it at the same time, or you're like
So
prepping it before
I've
the call?
prepared, yeah, I prepare it and then I essentially do a live reading so people can ask me questions. So we talk
Right.
about like their personality, we talk about their energy centers, which is like your natural strengths or where you're open to conditioning and influence. And then I also talk to them about their main life energies, which is their soul purpose. So pretty much it's like a full download onto who you are and why you are the way you are. And there's always different reactions. And I think the best way is to kind of like, again, us humans, we
Just be
love this
open
sense
to
of
it.
control. Yeah, like we want to
Yeah.
know exactly. And you just have to trust the magic. And I always empower people. Again, there's a reason and a curiosity why human design comes into your life at this time, why you want to get a reading, and then just be open to experience and see what happens. Because at the very least, you'll probably feel validated.
Yeah.
I've done hundreds of readings now. And even
Hmm.
though I've like maybe occasionally I've had people go, oh, this doesn't resonate with me. And then a few months later, they'll come back and be like, wow, I was like really triggered by your reading because I realized that what you were saying to me is what I wanted to be, or deep down I thought it would be, but I
Mm,
wasn't. And I wasn't ready to hear that information until later.
mm.
So I think it's just like again, why not try it? I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen, really, right?
Yeah. So do they have to put aside like a whole day, or like is it like an hour thing for some additional Q&A, or what does that look like?
It's usually like an hour reading. So most of it
Yeah.
the time will be like 45 to 50 minutes of me
Okay.
speaking. And then I leave 10 minutes for question and answer. If people
Yeah.
have more of a curiosity, I also use it in my one-to-one coaching. Like I've had clients for 2 years and we're still going through their human design charts because your chart
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
changes on a
Yeah.
daily
So people
basis
could
and on a
either
yearly
take the
basis.
100 or so page in the Q&A with you, and it's like just dust off, and it's like, great, thank you. Or they can kind of like continue to work with you to like keep going through like deeper and deeper into each bit. Is that
Yeah,
right?
depending on how much like it resonates. Some people come back monthly, some people do it quarterly. So I think it's just
Okay.
knowing that if you desire that support and you're
Yeah.
curious to see your
That's
blueprint,
available. Mm.
that's available. Because I think what makes it different, like if you're into like astrology or personality tests, human design is that on steroids. I always kind of explain astrology and personality tests, they give you the map, they give you the lay of the land. If you want the compass, like the practical things, what to do with that information, that is human design because it like draws from those systems.
Wow, that's intriguing. Okay, cool. So for people to find out more, I know that you've got a free chapter of this book, right? The
Yes,
Great
success.
Unlearning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so they can find that at, can you just let them know the website? Phidang.com, right?
Yeah, that's at my website. That's right, phidang.com. And you'll see at the bottom, you can like sign up to my newsletter and then you'll receive like a chapter as well from there. And on
And
my website, there's all the blog posts, links to my Instagram, podcast, and whatnot.
yeah, so if they want to do a reading, is that on your website? There's an option there,
Yes.
or yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Work with
awesome.
me. Yeah. Or just, message me on Instagram. If you're not sure, we can chat about it back and forth as well. But yeah, I always say to like, yeah, just trust the pull of your instincts. Why not?
Yeah, cool. Amazing. So I will be sure to just leave those links into this podcast so people can find you. And thank you so much for joining us for this podcast, Faye. It's been an amazing session.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You're running with the twists and turns. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Excel in life, live your purpose, be free.